Good afternoon. Hey, Dave. How are you? Let's call the meeting to order, please. Today is Tuesday, it's March the 10th. We're here at the main building for our regular monthly meeting. We're going to stand and go back to Bob, say the prayer, then say the pledge.
If you will bow your heads. Father, we thank you always for the things you give each one of us. We ask that you be with us today as decisions are made. We ask for the wisdom that only comes from you. We ask always that you would help us each day as we live in this wonderful place that you've given us. We ask always that we can protect it. And we ask for the protection of our health now. As we see things going on around us, we ask that you be with us and bless our community in such a way that everyone will love your presence here. And we ask this in Christ's wonderful name. Amen.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you call the roll, please?
Mayor Kathy?
Here.
Mr. Pollard?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Wallace?
Here.
Mr. Key?
Here. Thank you. Okay. Everybody have their cell phones on? All right. We have an agenda. The first item on the agenda is the variance request for 106 34th Street. As we normally do, we will get our administrator to give us just a brief, and then we'll open the public hearing and hear from Mark and Wood first.
Yes, sir, Mayor. This is similar to some of the other variances that we've had in the past where it was a duplex in the past and it's going back to a duplex, so it has a zero lot line between the two parcels. Outside of that, it meets the rest of our setbacks, just not that one setback. So it's a duplex going back in the same location, just in a slightly different footprint, so that's why it's requesting variance.
Okay, before we open the public hearing, I want to make the council aware if there's any disclosures that anyone needs to make concerning this particular request. It's appropriate to do so for the record. If not, we will open the public hearing and we'll hear those who want to speak on 106 34th Street. So very straightforward. It's the same one we've heard for several times. This is the party wall.
We're the property owner, we're the ones wanting to build back, but yes, it's basically.
Please identify you by name.
I'm Kyle McDaniel.
Thank
And
you.
this is my mother, Pam McDaniel. We're just building back what we had before, it's just gonna be narrower and deeper.
Yeah, I see it meets,
We meet all the
it
setbacks.
meets everything. It's just that party wall
Yes, sir.
that we've been through where, by the way it's written, it requires a variance.
And Mayor, just so the public knows, We will have a special meeting on the 23rd with the planning board. They've given us the flexibility to do that so that we can talk about the party wall type zoning for townhomes. If that gets pushed through on the 23rd, then we will have it on the city council meeting for the first reading on the 24th. Then it will go to the state level for their 30-day review, and then a month later, we'll have it back to here. So a month from the 24th, we should not have to do these variances.
And anyone else to speak? We'll close the public hearing, move to the table for council discussion and/or motion.
I make a motion to accept the variance request for 106 34th Street, units B and D.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions, comments? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Pollak?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Keith?
Yes.
Okay. Number 2 is the preliminary plat on North 30th Street. Or you wanna give us just a certain self-explanatory, or just give us for the record?
Very brief on this. This is strictly a preliminary plat approval. Basically, they're looking for density, access, simple type things. They still have to come back to us once they've worked everything out and have traffic studies done and dredge and fill permits done and canal dredging. All those things are in the future. What they're looking for this particular step is to make sure that you believe that they're going generally in the right direction, but it's a good time to talk about access to the property and things that concern you.
Okay, before we open the public hearing again for the council, if there's any disclosures that anyone feels they need to make for the record in terms of communication / knowledge of anything that anybody feels that needs to be part of the record. For me, I never know exactly when you've been around Mexico Beach as long as I have, how much you have to disclose, but I've known the Cord family a long time, a long time. I have absolutely no connection to the property, to any financial obligations / endeavors with any of the family other than just my personal knowledge of them and their family. I don't know that that is a conflict of in any way, but I think it's because of this is something that's been on the books. I just want to be on the record that I don't think friends is a conflict, but I've known the family for many, many years. Okay, we'll open the public hearing, and we want to, I assume, Frank, you want, or do you want to do for those that may not be familiar with what you're proposing, we'll let you go first?
If you don't mind, Mr.
Yes.
President. My name's Frank James. I'm with Brent Barber and Company, located in Fayetteville, Georgia. Sean Shanks with me today. He's a Moore-Bass Engineering. He's an engineer on the project. And Richard Ferry is with me today. He's with Brent Holdings, a land group of Brent Barber and Company. I'll refer some questions to them, if it's all right. And I'd like to just briefly go over the project. The project is located, basically it's accessed by 31st Street, 29th Street, also in the northern part of the property, 36th Street accesses the property. The subject property is 88 acres. It's currently zoned tourism mixed use. As you know, tourism mixed use has to have at least 3 uses. We have 4 uses on the property. We have open space of 27 acres or 31% that we're going to save as green space on the eastern boundary of the property. Retail and restaurant space is 8.82 acres or 10.2%. It'll be located in the southern part of the property, somewhat adjacent to an existing commercial area off of 31st Street. We have canal and boat area, 18.96% on the waterways, which is, 18.96 acres, which is 21.9%. And then single family homes makes up 31.8 acres or 36.8%. with 177 single-family lots. Lot sizes are 40 or 50 feet wide. The average canal lot is 125 feet deep. Average interior lot is 110 feet deep. We do have 3 or 4 odd size canal lots that are a little bit bigger than those dimensions, but that's for the most part, that's the lot size. In our previous meeting, asking for preliminary plat approval last week, a lot of folks felt the need for a boat ramp that would be for this particular piece of property, so these 177 homes would not impact the current public boat ramp system. We certainly take that to heart, and we're going to incorporate a single lane boat ramp in the project for this community. One question I had last week is a gated community? It's not a gated community. We want to be an integral part of Mexico Beach. We don't want to be separate from Mexico Beach by a gate. The housing, the sample houses that we've got listed here, those are truly just samples. You know, it's just kind of a basic concept, and we want to show that much like what's been in Mexico Beach and is currently being built in Mexico Beach, we're going to jive with that architectural plan. Let's see. That is about it. I'm ready to answer any questions you got. And if I don't have it, I'll point to one of these guys.
You got it. All right, we'll open it down to the public. Jim?
Jim Bush, 130 Palm Street. I'd like to speak on behalf of the Planning and Zoning Board. We had Mr. James 2 weeks ago. It was a very constructive meeting. We had more people in attendance than we actually have here. And I think to a man on the board and the vast majority of the public was much more comfortable with this development plan than with the St. Joe plan. However, everybody still expressed a concern with this plan coming in right after the St. Joe Phase 1. We're concerned that the city's growing too fast, too quickly. And that's something that obviously you're gonna have to address as far as utilities, support, and things like that are concerned. But we saw no reason to not approve it simply because it's only the preliminary plat. We don't have the details. There's still a ways down the road before we look at that. So when we get more details, we may file different than we do now. But right now, we see no reason not to approve it. That said, Mr. James and his group are much easier to deal with than the St. Joe Company was. Between the board and the public, we identified 4 major areas of concern. And they've already said they're gonna fix 2 of them. Mr. James mentioned the boat ramp. The second was trailer parking. They're gonna fix that, provide additional parking for that, and then they said they're definitely going to address the traffic issues. That's one of the first things they're gonna look at. So based on what the board has seen, and I think the public, after we listed them and what they were gonna do, is in favor of letting them go ahead at the present time.
Yes, sir.
I'm David Johnson, I'm from North 30th Street. That northern group there comes right to my front door there. So I told Frank James that I don't like that. So he said, I'll be at your house at 7. He said, I'll be at your house 7:30 the next day after the first meeting. And I said, he ain't gonna show up. Well, 7:30, Frank James was there, and we came to a solution of what, we thought was a good fix for that problem when it comes. So, just to say that they worked with me, first problem I had, and so I'm with these guys. I don't see any problem with that now. The northern road coming right in front of my house, we got that solved, how we're gonna do that. So anyway, good company for us, I'm concerned.
Others? They're here, so this is the time to ask them. They're sitting right there. Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to know what their solution would be for 36th Street.
With regards to, for his house.
Well, yes, how have you fixed that? So what changes were made?
Oh, for his property.
Yeah.
Well, I would assume that would,
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, point, and then I'll turn around and point to you for you too, and for the audience, this is an oversized lot on the corner. So instead of, the street had a slight bend in it, and it really, the headlights would shine right in its front doors, you know? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna break that street, put more of a curvature, and let it blend into the street more. And then, so basically in the evening, if he was on his front porch, headlights would sweep across his house, and that was a concern also. We talked about that. So in the corner right here, in that corner, we're gonna plant, native vegetation, maybe some palm plants or something, and that'll help block the light from getting on his house. And the subject lot, Mr. Mayor, is this one right here, and there's his house. It says it's oversized lot, I got plenty of room, so we'll bring that street in at more of a, put a curvature right in here and blend it, you know, up into that lot there. And then this area up in here, we'll make a planted island. So, okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Other comments or questions during the public hearing? Okay.
Wait, nobody else is
All
gonna
right,
say
come on.
anything. I still am curious how you plan to handle the traffic coming out of, is this 31st Street?
That's, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Okay, how do you plan to handle this much more traffic coming into the shopping center, and we're still adding a whole lot coming out on 32nd Street? I know that you've got this entrance here, and it looks like 30th Street is to be not a through street. This is 29th.
Yes, ma'am.
This is 31st, and there's 30th in there, so that's not going to be utilized.
We can tie it in if we'd like.
Well-
It matches up to the property line.
My whole question is, this is an immense amount of traffic, in my opinion, coming in and out of 31st Street in the shopping center, and our only exit from the shopping center, a legal exit, is 32nd Street. That's an awful lot of traffic, so what about that?
Frank,
I defer.
You defer, all right, go ahead.
Those were the other two issues that were identified before the P&Z, and we believe they should have until they present their formal request to solve those issues. So we're happy with the way things are now and with them planning, based on their willingness to work with the citizens with us.
And if I could reiterate for the ones that weren't here, the 29th, I don't think people are gonna come through 31st that much. It's kind of a hassle to go through that parking lot. And once you've done it one time, but if you can go over and get out, either in or out on 29th Street, I think they'll do that. We have the option of 30th Street, of bringing it into the project too, and having in and out access there. Also on 29th and 30th Street, we've discussed it, so we hadn't had a chance to, and Sean can reiterate on this if he needs to jump in and correct me. But I don't think we've had a chance to really look at the right of way on those two streets. But we'd be willing to work with the city, and we'll widen those streets. You know, we'll make them wider to make it easier access in and out.
In our packet, that's, the 31st Street is mentioned. Are these, Gina, are these your notes?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, why don't, just for the record, being we're in the front, would you want to just either read and or paraphrase some of these things that you have mentioned in your?
Sure, yeah, under the notes that are in your packet, I talked about water and wastewater capacity. I talked with Thomas about that. We're all good on that. We discussed several options of how, upgrades to the systems that may be needed. There's a lot of different ways to skin that cat, so. The entrance off of 36th Street, that in essence is doubling the traffic flow on that street. So that was a concern that I had, that maybe we wanna look at something a little, to make that a little better. Sounds like they've already started that process. The main concern was that entrance on 31st Street. There is currently, I believe, a piece of property for sale that would substantially help that situation, if that's possible. I don't know if that's possible, but, you know, to connect that street directly to 98, that could help that situation tremendously. The only other thing that I have was neighborhood parks. They actually, had some neighborhood parks in the first revision of this plan. This was the second revision that got revised after we sent out the mailing, but, so it didn't end up in your packet. This revision didn't, but, that's something else that needs to be a little more clear, that was a requirement of the comp plan that needs to be cleared up. But there's traffic studies, there's canal capacity studies, possibly there's permitting, environmental and stormwater, and all that's to come. You know, as Mario said, this is preliminary approval, density check, comp plan check, things like that, so, that's all I have.
Why don't we, just for the record, as the representative of the city, make sure that you make them aware while they're here of a potential better solution to 31st Street, if they're not aware, meaning the property where we would directly come off of 98. Jeannie,
You mean, you want me to?
I mean, before they leave and you're here today,
Oh,
if
talk
they're
about it.
not
Okay.
aware, just talk to them about that.
Yeah.
While they're here. Okay, for the public hearing now. Yes, ma'am.
Tracy Gaddis, and I'm not against this at all, but what I see here are more post office boxes. I'd like somebody at some point, our post office area is so congested now. There's the liquor store, there's gonna be the grocery store, there's also another shop. And that whole area is really congested. I'd like somebody at some point, maybe, and I don't even know, and this may not be the place, but I think somewhere down the road, we kinda need a post office where we can go. It is, if you haven't been to the post office lately, you know, you're getting blocked in with Pepsi trucks and all this and that, but it might be a thought somewhere. I'd love to see y'all put a thing in where we can have like a post office, because some of these people are not just gonna be tourists, they're gonna be living here, and they're gonna want a post office, and it's very, very congested down there now, so that's just a thought.
And a good, Maybe we could get a volunteer to deal with the federal government. No, but, good thought, good thought. Others, comments on the public hearing now while the floor is open? Okay, we're gonna close the public hearing, come to the table for questions from the council and or discussion. Council?
I've got a question, sorry. Are y'all gonna build the houses, or are you gonna sell lots?
I'll defer to Richard Ferry.
What we typically do, we're land developers, and we develop the land and then we sell the lots to builders. And a question that came up in the planning commission was very much the same question. It was, how do we sell them? Do we sell them in large chunks? Do we sell them individually? And at this point, we're looking at doing both. We'll allow a builder to come in and take a takedown of 5 or 10 lots, and then if the neighbor wants to take down 1 or 2 lots, we can do something individually as well.
How are you gonna control what kind of house is built by whatever builder?
We'll create an HOA management company to manage that type of construction. So the HOA will have an architectural review committee, which will consist of us, the developers, to make sure that it meets a level of expectation that we have.
So that could change, that would be subject to change all the way through the process of the development. So you'd have to review each separate plan, so you're not gonna have a set.
If it's an individual builder, building on one lot, yes, we have to review every single plan. However, if it's a larger builder who wants to take down 10 or 15 lots over a certain amount of time, they may submit us 5 different plans with different facades, and we'll review the plans and then allow them to keep on doing those plans.
What kind of control do we have over making sure those are the kind of houses we want? Do we have any control?
All we have is size.
So,
We don't do architectural, we're a free market. And hope we stay there.
well, one other question I've got, I think the only other question I've got is, what will happen with the project if you can't get the dredging done, if you can't get permits for dredging? Will this project just die, or what's your intention?
Our intention right now is to develop it as a canal project. We've begun and Sean will probably speak better about what's called the flushing study. He can probably address that. We've done, quite a bit of preliminary, review of that it will flush. In your packet, I believe you have a different plan that shows the canal, coming into a larger marina behind the commercial section. Our engineer who reviews that determined that it didn't flush. So we put in a few culverts coming through that allowed the marina to flush. However, the rest of the canal did not flush at that point. And he explained it this way. He explained it, it's kind of like squeezing a balloon. That if you squeeze it here, it'll blow up over there. That's what we did when we moved the marina into that middle part, and then put the culverts going through the other side of the canal. It didn't allow it to flush on the top part. And so, our intentions are entirely, this will be a canal project, so that, with purpose of boating. I think Frank mentioned that every lot here will have access for a boat slip. And so whether the lot is directly on the canal or one of the interior lots, they'll have a boat slip. And so that's our intention of what we intend to build. So, if to your question, if that doesn't happen, we have to really reconsider our options here.
Okay.
And one of our very first meetings was, Sean Shanks, Morbass Consulting. One of our very first meetings was with DEP to discuss the dredging of the canals, and they led us to believe that as long as we followed a certain protocol, that was doable.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question. It may be for the applicant, it may be for staff. The packet has a document that titled preliminary plat. That's what I would have in mind that would be approving. It sounds like there's a little bit new version of that. Do we have that for the sake of knowing exactly what we're approving and referencing the right document?
In other words, if this is what's intended, not what's in our packet, we need a copy of this, or is what's in our packet what's intended?
What's in the packet is not what's on these boards.
Which one do you intend to build?
Well, the change occurred when we realized that the marina wouldn't flush. And so that's when we removed that little dog leg of a marina. The overall density is the same. I think the number of lots is the same. The general division of uses is the same. It's just we eliminated that leg of the marina and then kind of relayed out the commercial and portion of the residential.
So you intend to use that drawing?
Yes.
So we can get a copy of
We
that
have it.
drawing?
We
Okay.
have it.
That's what we need.
Yes, sir.
Does that satisfy what we're doing? I mean, just, did you raise that question about the resolution?
I mean, format wise, the document that's called preliminary plat is more appropriate for a plat, but if we can at least add a title to that that says preliminary plat, I think it's conveying the same plan.
Bobby?
Maybe I have a
question now. Now, remember, just sit tight, we'll come back. We're gonna stay at the table right now. Go ahead, Bob.
Okay. The stormwater plan we got, is this tied in anything in that, or are we gonna have to relook at that, or what?
If you're referring to, the document that was put out during the, Gumbo Festival that looked at all the interactions
Okay.
between stormwater and everything, this canal is an integral part of that.
Okay,
They would be making it larger than what we already had, so to a degree, this complements that. But this is private property, and this is a permit that they would have to get approved, and I also don't understand how they're doing their stormwater, so since you asked stormwater, I wanna be specific on the stormwater. I know that they can't put stormwater into this canal unless it's been pre-treated and everything else, so.
Yeah, there will be a water quality component to this. There'll be linear, water quality being used.
okay.
Oh, I think it's a
Good, the traffic flow in and out is my only concern in the width of the road. You get two cars on now a 50-foot, I think that's what y'all proposed. And I know this is all proposed, but the traffic was and the boat, and what y'all brought up, but I really think, gonna be good. And if you'll just get this traffic and get with Gina, I think that'd be a way for me to get rid of that traffic problem.
One question, at P and Z and or any discussions, HOA owns the canal? Who owns the canal?
Yes, the HOA will own the property.
So they'll be responsible for the maintenance
Yes, sir.
of the canal?
Yes, sir.
Frank can't get his boat out, they're not calling the city?
No, they will not. Frank might, but but you can refer back to
I
the
just
HOA.
I want to be clear up front. Who's responsible for the maintenance
Yes, sir.
of this canal?
The homeowner association will own property. There's a, the way it's being shown, there's an HOA owned strip around the canal. And that strip that runs through there will be common. And that canal will run through the middle of that, and that'll allow the HOA to, whatever access.
So they're gonna have water rights, HOA will have water rights.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
And Frank asked that I also say that we will be collecting, the HOA initially will be collecting management, not management fee, a capital fee to go towards that maintenance of the canal, because that's gonna be something that the HOA typically doesn't do, but our HOAs, when we have pools and we have larger rec centers, always have to prepare for a capital issue that occurs, whether it's resurfacing a pool, tends to be very expensive for the homeowners, but this is just being other expensive.
Okay, so that, just so that, because that has come up in several of my discussions with folks about this project, is the city taking on the responsibility of that canal?
No, sir.
We got all the canal we can have.
Understood.
So that's good, so that'll be part of the HOA?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right, anybody, yes, sir.
Since you brought up the canal, I'd like to ask about the landscape within the subdivision itself. Typically, you would deed over the roadway and the city would, once you built the road, it would become a city road.
Yes, sir.
Is the HOA intending on maintaining the landscape within the right-of-ways and the sidewalks, or is that something that it's looking to impose on the city? Because again, landscape within subdivisions can sometimes be a good bit higher than what we normally have.
Yes.
And I wanna make sure that it's just clear here.
I would think that anything above the normal will be maintained by the HOA. We will have, obviously, entrance features. Frank explained some of what we do on 36th Street. But on every one of our entrances, we'll have some sort of entrance feature, which will go into the right of way, of course, not a monument or a sign or anything like that, but the landscaping you're referring to will absolutely be maintained by the HOA. And then if we have street trees that are outside of what you would expect from the city, then that's something that we would have to do.
I would like to make sure that whatever trees you use in the streets, a canopy tree is a beautiful tree until a fire truck has to come down the roadway.
Okay.
And inevitably you plant it as a, 6-inch caliper.
That's right.
And a 6-inch caliper only has a ball of tree at 8 and his truck runs at 10. And we wanna make sure whatever you put there does not become a problem for the fire truck, but then also looking at the plan, you show it right next to the sidewalk. And then it becomes a root ball that then eats the sidewalk, and because it's a city sidewalk, once you get a 1/2-inch trip hazard, it becomes a liability for the city, so please.
Why don't we, when we make that determination, work it out with y'all?
Yes, thank you.
All right, anything else at the table?
We can go, the public can go through that now. You're not gonna block it because you own it.
No, sir.
Okay.
Okay, we're gonna circle back now. I saw Dennis Cupid, go ahead.
Dennis, again, I would just, define a marina for you. In your.
Yeah, well, let Frank take this one.
In this case, we're using marina very loosely. And And basically, it's a docking area for, the interior homes to have a place to put their boat. We have no desire to sell gasoline or have a professional, retail marina on site. It's just a wide spot where you can put a bunch of boats. That's how we're determining marina in this case.
Bill?
Bill McGuire on 406 Fifth Street. Reference the canal again, I may have heard something, but I don't know if the city has ability to say you have to keep it at a certain quality. About 18 months ago, we had kind of a nasty storm. Many of our private canals were such that it caused quite a bit of a problem. I don't know if the city has the ability to ask you as you go through this to keep a quality check you want to look at so that we don't run into that 10 years down the line should we have another storm.
Okay. Other comments now? All right, council? We'll bring it back here for either a discussion of the request or a, motion. And be reminded, this is a preliminary plat. So I'll still have development order process, everything to go through that anyone else does, so.
So if there's anything that you want as part of your approval that's not covered on that drawing, make it part of your motion. We prepared a short resolution just to get this on paper, what we're approving today. So if there's any conditions or additions you need to add, we can add those, but if that plan as is fine, then we just approve that plan.
Well, I think, we all know and have heard that they are looking at making some alteration, I mean, somewhat minor in some cases, but they're looking at traffic, they're looking at the things that Jim, those two items. Now, does that need to be part of the resolution, or does we, because we're approving that, doesn't mean that the traffic flow is gonna be exactly what's on there?
Oh, no, the traffic will be the thing probably looked at the closest. in the
What I mean, does that, I understand, but that doesn't need to be part of a,
Only if you think it's significant enough that you are not completely confident it'll be worked through over the next several months and you wanna put it on paper now.
they can't get a development order for style work.
Yeah.
Correct.
All right, so we're gonna stay with the discussion slash, when is it appropriate to read this? After the motion, if there is one?
Yeah, we may as well follow our ordinance process. We do a reading and then a vote.
Okay. Discussion or motion on the preliminary plat application?
Make a motion, we accept the preliminary plat for North 30th Street, Corey property.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Key?
Yes.
Just for the record, I have the approval of this resolution before you. It states, the title is the Resolution of the City of Mexico Beach, Florida, approving the preliminary plat for Sweetwater at Mexico Beach located at parcel ID number 04135-000-000 and providing an immediate effective date.
All right, do we have a motion to adopt ordinance 20 dash?
It's resolution 20, and we're not sure what number it is. We're kind of working at the last minute, but it's the resolution on the
Sweetwater.
Mexico Beach.
All right, we'll relate to that.
We'll fill in the number this afternoon.
So how about we just say that we have a motion to adopt the resolution on the Sweetwater development?
Sounds great.
Is there such?
I make a motion to adopt the resolution on Sweetwater development.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any opposition to the resolution? Let it be noted, record file, for the record, vote 5. Okay, gentlemen, welcome to Mexico Beach.
Thank you very much. I look forward to it.
Okay. All right, number 3, let's take this, we got some figured out.
Can I go too? You sit out now.
See y'all.
Y'all have a good day.
Okay. See you then. Feel love like it did earlier. All right, moving on to number 3, commercial development order for 820 Highway 98. Mario, would you please?
Yes, Mayor, this is a auxiliary structure that is being placed to support a temporary structure. That doesn't confuse you.
I know the wording of that in our LDRs can be.
In conversations with Gina, an auxiliary structure cannot be placed without a primary structure, and the primary structure is the temporary food trailer that's there. So it's a condition on a condition, and if approved, both conditions would go away at the same time, is what is implied.
You always make the trailer the primary,
Okay.
or the open air cafe the primary.
The request, we will open the public hearing. Again, ask council any disclosures that need to be made concerning the request for development order at 820 Highway 98. If there,
I guess I could say, my son works there, but, as far as it goes.
That's a disclosure, you eat there too, don't you?
I do eat.
I like the tacos.
well, I think, when you get into the disclosure part of this, Nick can help me here, but if you feel you have a conflict, that is something that you, becomes a reason to disclose and decide whether or not you partake in the vote. That's the whole purpose of the disclosure. So that's is that the best way to paraphrase that?
That's right, and if you were hinting that we should look at whether a son being an employee is an issue, I'm double checking. If he was an owner, it'd be an issue.
Do you have to pay for yours?
Yes, I do. Dearly.
That pretty much says it. All right, so we're gonna open the public hearing. You made your disclosure, Nick,
And
can
then
advise,
Nick check it out.
can advise and,
Okay.
so, Michael, you here to speak from?
If I need to, yes. Obviously, all of you know what the project is and what I'm trying to do there. The goal is not to make this the big end-all plan for Killer Seafood. We have an opportunity to come back and do something for the community, and I think we have, over the years, proven a benefit to the community. This will allow us to keep that tradition, keep a destination that has been on people's mind in Mexico Beach for 17 years now. It's not something to be thrown away lightly. I fought hard to get back to just the level we are right now, just with the food trailer. Insurance being what it is, it was enough to pay off the mortgage on the property, and yeah, we own a couple of mighty fine pieces of commercial property right now. But it's not the time to go in over your head in debt to build something on that piece of property. I'm in as deep as I can go with the food trailer and the open air cafe that I hope to attempt to place over it. It's there for the comfort level of my customers, of the building itself, to protect that in some ways, but you're talking a pretty harsh environment there now that is not conducive to business in any way, not to mention the aesthetics of it. I mean, if you want to see a big blue turd in a cat box for the next few years, then you got it right there. But there's not a tree or anything around, landscaping or anything that makes the place look nice. You've all seen the package and the artist rendering that I have there. It's not going to come out looking exactly like that, but the anticipated look of it is a cool beach bungalow
places we can do that here. Everybody's delayed their own openings for whatever reason. Not enough businesses to make this place a destination that people are gonna wanna come to. I'm trying to be one of those to help do our part to it. If you're on my side, then I appreciate your vote. If not, I understand where you're headed.
Yes, sir.
Rob Priest, Colorado Drive, looking at the plans that he has for that, putting that small pole barn up, is gonna be a huge improvement, the way it'll be fixed up. Like you said, you drive out there right now, all you have is the truck. And around the area, there's nothing, it just looks like hell all around there. Putting this up, the way he plans on fixing it up, is gonna look nice. And, you know, talking about that, I just got a quick question, maybe you guys can answer me. I know Kill Seafood's there, but right down from him, the 2 food trucks parked there. I thought you could only have a truck somewhere if you had a business before.
Yeah, the council, I'll answer that, the council made an exception to that months and months ago and allocated that one lot for food trucks / food trailers, instead of having them scattered here, there, and around. And that's why those 2 were there, was based on that, we made that allowance.
Okay, but, I mean, what he plans on doing there, I think that'd be a huge improvement for that chunk of property. And especially, everybody's driving down 98, and you can see what kind of an eyesore 98 is. I mean, that's gonna be a huge improvement.
Others? Yes, sir.
Jim Bush on behalf of P and Z again. One of the things that we wanted to make sure is what the intended use of that pole barn, or whatever you wanna call it in the future. And that will be an integral part of whatever the permanent structure is gonna be in the future. This is just one step to getting to the end.
We're looking at a lot of options on the ways to build back here. It's not something that we take lightly. It's not a debt that we can incur right now. The payoff on it just wouldn't be there for years to come for us. A lot of reason, a lot of people haven't built their businesses back yet. And if I can eke out a living for the next couple of years, or whenever you say I gotta go, I know you put a time frame on this, on the ability for businesses to do their business out of trailers, but I don't understand where that starts and ends. I understand it was 2 years, but from, I don't know.
The date of the ordinance.
And.
The date of the ordinance that we passed.
And so that was passed when?
I believe it was last month.
Okay. So I'm just hoping that, everyone who's in this town who's doing business out of a temporary shelter can adhere to that same rule, and if that's applied fairly, then that applies to everyone who's in here doing business out of a temporary structure, or out of a pole barn, or out of a trailer.
Well, that's what the ordinance says.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
it
So,
identifies what that ordinance
And
says. Food truck,
and
food trailer.
The ordinance is specifically towards a food trailer, not towards any other trailer business?
Temporary structures.
Okay, so
Temporary
i.e. welcome center, i.e. real estate offices, i.e. your business, all those are temporary structures, correct?
Temporary structures, I'm trying to think, yeah, if they're trailers, if they're, I mean,
Why don't we just provide a copy of the ordinance after the meeting?
it identifies, I'm not sure where you, I mean, no, everyone's gonna be given the same opportunity, that was the whole purpose of the
Okay,
ordinance. Was to clarify what you could do and how long you could do it for.
Okay, and temporary structure, is that a temporary structure no matter what it is? Is it a trailer? Does it have to have wheels to be a temporary structure? What are you calling temporary structure? Because, as I said, those specific examples of businesses doing business out of temporary structures, are they on the clock as well?
If it's identified in the ordinance, then absolutely.
Okay, does that include your business?
I'm not in a temporary structure. I'm in a building, I'm not in the same building I was in, but I'm in a warehouse. I wouldn't call that it was there before the storm.
Well, exactly, you're a place of business though. And
No,
nor
it's
the
not.
place, nor the place
Absolutely
next door
not.
to it, nor the place on the other side, so.
But I won't be concerned, I'm building a building, so I'm not gonna be.
I don't see any problem in 2 years, us looking at this again,
Okay, I'm just, I'm making sure that I'm.
Well, the
if
ordinance,
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna repeat, the ordinance is written in a way that I don't think it's subjective, I think it's very clear.
Well,
And I don't have it today, that's why I don't wanna speak.
But we can
exactly
get it
to
for
what
you, how about that? We
beautiful,
can do
as
that,
long as temporary structure means everybody who's doing
as
business.
long as
out
it's
of a
just the way
temporary
the
structure.
ordinance is written.
Okay.
Not sure I'm following where you're going with
I
that.
don't see what's the difficult about calling. I'm asking what is classified as a temporary structure. Is it just?
We're gonna get the ordinance for you.
It focuses a lot on something that doesn't qualify as a building for Florida building code. That's certainly a factor.
Okay, is there any other comments about from the public on the open, public hearing? Excuse me. Okay, we move to the table. Are there any comments from the council?
I have a comment, so from the day of the ordinance, they've got 2 years, correct? Okay, and that was, when was the ordinance, not long ago?
A month
Yeah,
ago.
okay. So at the end of that, depending on how we progress, is that something that we can extend at that time? So we could extend it?
Right.
Because here's what, I live here and I'm kinda getting tired of having to gotta go almost at least to shipwreck in the evenings, so a lot of times Michael's place will be full and we just don't have that many places, so I don't know how, and Michael, maybe you can answer it. You gotta have a certain amount of people here before you can afford to build a real expensive structure, correct?
Sure, that's my whole point. It's now's not the time to bite off a huge building project that's gonna take a year or more to fulfill before you ever serve the first thing, and then try to start, okay, is there enough people in this town to pay for that expensive building you just had to build? It's just not ready yet.
Is there a set size, do we have a set size on what size building has to be built for him to have a restaurant in?
I could build the same 1,250 square foot building I had before that was out of size and space, but that's not, that's a wasted thing for the future, building a single one-use replica of what was there before. The trailer itself is an asset.
We're trying to deal with the pole barn
I
issue
understand.
and the request for the building permit.
Well, I've built a lot of stuff out of poles that when you skin it, you can't tell the difference in a metal building and if, depending on what you skin it in, you can skin it in hardy board, it looks like a house, so, the pole barn as just being called a pole barn, that's a little cruel, really, if depending on what you make it look like. And I fully understand we don't want temporary stuff to be here forever. But I think that, I certainly don't want us to shoot ourselves in the foot. And as long as you said we can revisit it again and later maybe add another year or two, whatever we see fit at that time, I'm good with that. But, Michael took care of this community, him and several other fellows. And I know that we can't let him do something that no one else can do just because he was generous in that. But if there's any way possible that, when it comes to term, if we still need those kinds of things here, that we should seriously consider letting it go a little longer because, I don't know when we're gonna get stuff built here. And I'm tired of going to St. Joe, really, personally.
Well, one of the problems you got, a canvas cover where he's located will not work. Got too much wind.
Right.
Everybody here knows how much wind we've had the past year. So it's got to have more of a permanent, a sturdier structure than just a canvas tent.
So, but you're putting a metal roof on it, right?
Yes. Yes, metal roof, and anticipate putting slatted wood sides halfway up and some clear curtains down to block the wind and the rain from coming in that way.
So pelicans won't be able to steal our french fries.
They're brutal. You feed them once,
Well, that's the only question I have, Mayor.
Yeah, the pole barn will be installed as a permanent structure because it has to for the wind load.
How quick,
Taking it up is not, I'm sorry?
how quick will you get this done?
Well, I've had Dave Bonar on hold for months.
Yeah, we'll
When
come
he helped
down.
me put it up.
We'll come
So
down.
we can have an old fashioned, Amish pole barn raising. I'll bring the Krugels.
Yeah, okay, Bobby.
Wait a minute, Dick.
Anybody else?
Oh, the conflict question. So the exact wording is that if the vote would inure to the special private gain or loss of your relative, then you need to abstain from voting. In my mind, if your son is flipping burgers for $11 an hour, there's no special gain for him. If he's management and his finances will rise and fall on whether this business expands, you should abstain from voting.
Well, he's gonna make the motion.
Well, let me ask a couple of questions. You can chew on that and decide, I guess. I mean, I don't know how you can. So the pole barn's gonna be enclosed?
Not entirely, no.
Okay. And more for the record, had we not passed that ordinance last month, I thought we were being extremely proactive in helping the businesses identify what they could and couldn't do because it was soon to be out of date. So the fact that we took that action to pass an ordinance to help those that are trying to decide about temporary buildings, structures, pole barns, trailers, whatever it was to help them get back.
Mm-hmm.
We did that as a benefit. We didn't do it as a detriment, as if we were trying to keep somebody from putting something there that they couldn't. I just want to make sure, for the record, my intention when I brought that up was that the ordinance was expiring, and had we done nothing, then we had nothing. So,
Thank you for that.
second of all, in the paperwork that's submitted, the staff recommendation says it is approval if the intent is for the structure to be temporary during the same time as the food trailers. So, I'm asking, are you comfortable with that? That's the.
And when the trailer goes, the pole barn goes?
Yeah.
Sure. I mean,
I
I told you the other day, the pole barn is a minimal investment, $5,000. That's more important to me to have the shelter and protection that will allow me to do that $5,000 in business in the first week. It'll be more comfortable than without that pole barn. So yeah, the cost of that and the minimal labor to put it up and destroy it when it's done, sell it when it's done, whatever, that's not a concern.
Mayor, I just checked my notes, and sometimes my notes are wrong, but I think we still have to do a second reading and adoption on that ordinance, so that I don't think the clock's even started yet as far as trying to count this.
I was gonna say, we didn't pass it, we just read it.
Yeah.
We
so-
read it, and we needed extra time before we could have a
Because
second reading.
we'll wait for the next meeting,
Right,
so.
so it's gonna be more than 2 years from today.
Okay, so, other questions?
Let me say this. My son is gonna get paid the same amount to work if he has a shed, if he don't have a shed. I don't feel like I need to.
That's fine, it's, like I said, that's your, okay, we have any other questions?
Yeah, I just got, and it's what they said here, it's a temporary, and we said it's a temporary.
Yes, if the trailer
And-
goes, that will go, but if, like Daryl said, there are ways to build that into a permanent structure. If an architect came along and said, hey, I can turn that into something that could be part of a bigger structure, then sure, why wouldn't I use that? I have the elevation capability underneath that, at the height this structure will be, to go up the 3 feet I'll need to, and still have plenty of space underneath. So should that become part of a plan to build something else, you know, that would be addressed in all sorts of things, you know, whether land developments, development orders and other things like that. That would always have to be approved down the line, but yes, it will be, the intention is a temporary structure that if the trailer goes, that goes at the same time.
And you said it's gonna be a permanent structure with the pole barn. You said, yes, you did. But my question.
No, I'm saying it's being erected as a permanent structure because of the wind load. If you just,
that's what you said.
yeah, if you just put it up as a
Permanent structure.
temporary thing, then that does include all the anchoring and the concrete and stuff that makes it, you know, just by virtue of the definition, permanent.
I see what you're saying, but that goes against what we, for me, goes against what we're supposed to do. As a temporary and what you said, permanent structure, the people that's in around my neighborhood and around me that want to build some kind of something, put their utility building, we no. And then now, I can see Wallace, we need it. Don't get me wrong, I'm just like the rest of them up here. It would be nice, but I just can't see it. For me, I can't.
And what is your opposition to it, Jerry?
It's a temporary build. Temporary.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's just like another restaurant in town that's been working out of a temporary tent.
Why don't we go with a tent? And I know you're gonna say the wind, but why don't we, something side that goes against what the.
And y'all, come on down and put a tent up there and see how long it lasts.
I don't want it. Sorry.
I understand. That's why.
Do we need a motion to approve this?
When we're finished with the discussion, we will.
I'm through discussing.
What would you want to fight?
Well, I know we keep beating this horse to death.
Well, these folks there are entitled to their opinion.
No, I agree.
Okay, so
I
how
agree.
about just,
No, I haven't said
you
anything.
want to chair the meeting?
I'm not taking any time. I'm just being my usual get along self. I'll just be here till June.
You through? I don't want to interrupt you.
Can I drink my water? Well, you just stirring it up.
Okay. Is there board discussion? Okay. Then is there a motion? And I think the motion needs to be clear about what it is that we're approving. That's important. Whoever that wants to make it.
So what are we approving? That it's a temporary structure until the trailer ends its term?
Well, I just think it needs to be defined, whatever you think is, if you're gonna make the motion, if we're gonna tie it to a temporary, to the same conditions as the food trailer, then it just needs to be identified what the motion is. That's all. So that everyone there and here understands.
I make a motion that we accept it based on the fact that Michael understands that it's a temporary structure that will have to go when the food trailer goes.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
No.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Key?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. And we need to remember on that, other ordinance, I guess that'll be part of our next meeting. All right, moving on, we have a series of minutes from July to February.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
We normally would do these, we're not gonna do them individually. By consent, just make it a consent item. If there's any addition, or normally it would be under a consent item. Things would be arranged a little different, but that's just a formality right now. Chair recommended we accept them by consent unless there's a reason for either changes or corrections. Do I have a motion to accept by consent?
There are a lot of errors or changes that should be made, at least in the last 3 that I read. Bridget Precise is only identified by Bridget, and Chris Short from Preble Fresh is only identified by Chris. I think it would be appropriate to make sure that the names in there.
Would you submit that? Would you submit your corrections?
All right.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Do we wanna hold off on approving those ones that need corrections?
Well, I'm not convinced those need corrections, but we can take hers. I mean, I don't, if we think the last names are reasons not to accept them.
You could accept them without the last names, but
I know.
we wanna, whatever we approve today is the real approved version, we're not gonna change them after the fact. So we either need to point out the changes before we approve.
Well, I didn't catch those. I read, I didn't think of the last names as being a reason for correction, to be honest with you. And I'm okay with that, but that doesn't mean that we can't.
I read them and I wasn't a part of these meetings, it was pretty clear who they were talking about tonight. I mean, I knew who they were talking about.
Okay, so we can wait, we can simply
Is that
table
all?
the minutes, we can table the minutes and see if we have someone that wants to submit some corrections that we feel need to be incorporated, or we can accept them today based on everyone's knowledge of what's in it.
And you have many, many sets of minutes, so if there are 3 or 4 sets that you wanna look at further, you can approve the others.
Well, I didn't see, when you, to me, they were concise enough to know that from almost a year ago, that, or 8 months ago, that they were. I'm gonna ask again, we can table or accept by consent. And remember, the minutes, there's also the tapes. There's not like there's, you know, the detail of these really could be, some of these were in much more detail than I really expected them to be. But that's, again, motion to table or motion for consent approved.
I would move that we approve by consent the minutes that are being discussed.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to accept by consent. Is there any opposition? Okay, motion carries 5-0. Okay, Thomas Wilson,
Yes, sir.
you're up.
Over at the substation 14, over at Second Florida, we lost a primary pump. We have 2 in the well. We lost one. It's locked up. We can't. There's nothing in it, so it has to be sent off to be rebuilt. Rebuild price is $4,850, $4,850. We was to purchase it brand new. As you can tell, it's $7,500. Normally, we in the past before the storm, if a pump come in that can be rebuilt, we usually rebuild them at a cheaper rate. So, what I'm needing from council, basically, right now there's only one pump at the lift station, as everybody knows, that's what picks up all of Beacon Hill. So it's a high flow station. Second pump fails, we'll be on the bypass, so we will eat the cost either way. So, I'm just looking for approval to pay the $4,850 to have it rebuilt, so we can get it back in the lift station.
How quick?
Takes 4 to 5 weeks on a rebuild, it's 2 weeks on a brand new. So we're looking at an additional 2 weeks. Because they have to come pick it up and send it back.
Right.
We gotta pay freight both ways.
Can we wait 4 to 5 weeks?
It's actually been running on for about a month now.
What kind of problems have you had with rebuildings in the past?
Nothing, they come back. When we rebuild a pump, it's basically remanufactured. The only thing that comes back that's original is the impeller on the bottom of the pump. They put new motors, new seals. They essentially send you a brand new pump line with liquid in. So basically they're And they come back with a brand new 5-year warranty, just like they would if you bought a brand
So
new.
they're gonna come back with a warranty,
Yes.
and the new one's got the same kind of
Yes.
warranty?
And you put them side by side, you couldn't tell the difference.
Sounds like a no-brainer to me.
It's-
So the
Tell
wait
the dollar
time
amount.
saves a lot of money.
Wait 2 weeks, save 50% of the money. So, and normally we do get them rebuilt just after the hurricane when they're clogged up. When the liquiding goes bad, they cost more to rebuild than they're worth. So then we have to buy them brand new. And as we know, the hurricane.
Why
comes.
is this is within the purchasing power of the
It is, Mayor, but because we're getting a lot of these, I'd like to get reimbursed just because it keeps us flowing as the year progresses.
Okay.
So it's the complication of quantity.
And I'm fine with it.
Depending on the detail of our budget adopted too, there would be reasons to bring it to the board here.
You know, he did mention the word reimbursement. This is not FEMA reimbursement. It was not a damage by FEMA, so it is a cost we have to.
I don't see how we're not, I don't see anything here that lives, I don't know what option B is.
I did cut the price a little bit. I did say it was a little money if we buy it instead of buying it new. So normally I just go to the extreme, but I did save a little bit.
Okay. Yeah, that's what we're here for.
I make a motion we buy the used one instead of the new one.
Make a dollar on that
For the $4,850.
All right, we have a motion for $48.50 to buy a pump. Is there a second? Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0. Okay. You're still up?
Yes, sir, and I'm gonna get Mario to help me with this, so he can explain a little bit. Right now, we have 3 condos that have 3-inch or either 4-inch wholesale meters. They 1 meter feeds the entire building. Their meters are not working correctly, so we're unable to capture the amount of water that are being used at that condo. And they've been charging the minimum rate. Well, in the middle of July, we know condos using more than the minimum rate. Without replacing the meters, we have no way of knowing how much water we're truly billing for. Does that make sense? So, I got with Mario last week. We've identified the ones that are completely dead, that do not work. We do have some that are manually read. We can still, they are working, we just have to manually read them. We're not worried about them right now. We're just focusing on these 4 that are completely dead, that had to be replaced. So,
And some of this will get reimbursement. Now we are talking about gray because some of it was damaged by hurricane, others weren't damaged by hurricane. But in conversations with Thomas, whenever a meter goes down in the future, we need to be banking on replacing the meter as quickly as possible, because if we don't have a meter, we can't be charging the rate that should be charged, instead of just putting a blanket charge on it. So for the future, we will have this, and again, this would not require council. It's more information for the council, because we're just going through a lot of costs, and it's just keeping the council informed.
Okay. Question? About these master meters?
How long does it take to pay for a meter at full?
Some of these condos are paying $3,000 for one payment, so.
That's a monthly payment?
It pays for itself.
Yeah.
And if you don't replace it, all
Yeah.
you're getting is the minimum.
The minimum,
And
which
I don't know what the minimum is. The minimum might be 1,000 or 2,000, so.
Another no-brainer.
yeah, they kind of pay for itself in the long run. Just,
But again,
I don't
it's good
understand.
information for the council and the
Sure.
public.
Thank you.
All right, is there a motion to, what is that, 3? How many?
on the next page, it has the total with the amount. Got the quote.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, it's 4 meters at a total cost of $11,425.
All right, do we have a motion?
Make a motion, we pay that cost of $11,425 for the meters.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Any opposition? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, Mario?
Mayor, as we all know, Jenny's last day was on Friday. We met with a consultant that has provided accounting services for the city in the past, on a retainer type basis. We had that meeting on Wednesday. They provided us a simple proposal on Thursday. I took the liberty of taking that simple proposal, blacking out the price, sending that basically scope of work to a couple of other local accountants so that the council would have a couple of options, not just one option to choose from today. So what has been put in your box is a proposal from Roberson, a proposal from CRI, and a proposal from Keith LeMasters. To give you a brief description, Roberson has provided continuous services for the city as a backup accounting firm, so it's good to have another set of eyes. CRI has worked for the city in the past as their auditor. They no longer work as the auditor, so they could provide accounting services. They are a very large organization. You'll notice that this does have a price. I did check with legal counsel to make sure that even though it's a professional service, that we could have a request for proposal as opposed to a request for qualification, and we are able to do the proposal. Therefore, you've got the pricing also included. And then the last sheet is Keith LeMasters. Keith LeMasters served as an auditor for the city of Panama City for 3 or 4 years, and then he worked for another company, and then he worked for the city directly as an employee of the city in the accounting department for 2 or 3 years. So again, all three are fully capable organizations that could provide good services to the city, and it's available for you to consider. And this is an interim stopgap. We are still advertising for a city clerk, and if this moves forward, then I'll ask a different question right afterwards. Well, let me go ahead and ask it. Within the charter, we have to have a city clerk, no matter what we do. So one of the things that is necessary in this meeting is for us to appoint a city clerk to some capacity today, if at all possible. Lindsay has been backing me up here lately. She did spend a little bit of extra time with Jenny the other day. She actually already has access to most of our contracts and files, and in speaking to her, she would be willing to fill as an interim city clerk, and if the council would consider that, in conjunction with this, to provide temporary accounting services, provide Lindsay as the temporary interim city clerk. And there's even one more step after that, so.
Let's discuss the applications that we have for the public. We don't have any applications that fill our accounting needs. We don't have any.
Correct.
Anything that has come in that gives us reason to consider. We have some city clerk applications, and we have some HR applications, but we don't have any accounting applications, which is one of the main focuses of the advertisement is, what we need to do is get our arms around our financial situation and get some budget analysis and see where we are. And I like this key from one, I like the idea that we cannot, I like his proposal in not to exceed for 1 month $5,500, which would of course be covered by the salary that we're not using for the clerk's position that is vacant. And give him a chance to get back to us with a proposal to see where we are and buy us another month of potential advertising for someone that could come in and take over the job. But we don't need to just wait. In my opinion, we do not need to sit waiting on an applicant to walk in. We've got work that has to be performed, or we keep backing up, and it's hard to run any kind of business if you don't know your financial position. We're having a lot of money running through our hands. So, for me, I like Keith, I like his proposal, I like his background, and that would be my vote would be for Keith to put him on a service contract or a service agreement for not to exceed $5,500 for a month, and give him a chance to come report to us and see where we are. See what he can get done. Others?
I agree with him, Keith. From what I've seen, the three we have here, his firm is probably about the best to go with. I agree with Mario talking about Lindsay, being and the city clerk. Do we need to, at a later date, not look at just the city clerk, look at some type of financial
Well,
person?
I think that's coming.
That'll be my next, I
that's
didn't
the
wanna
thing.
put three on the table at once.
I know.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to do as we have found this is our first rodeo trying to find people in the clerk / accounting world to come work for us, so I
Yeah.
think we are gonna discuss that here shortly.
Okay.
I agree. I like where we are. Gotta do something right away.
Discussion and or motion?
I don't think we have a choice. I think that he's the best choice of our choices that we have right now. And you're right, we gotta know where we stand, and we're already behind the 8 ball, so let's do it.
Okay, motion, make a motion, we take Keith Lemaster CPA, for financial help.
If you would, please add to your motion an amount not to exceed $5,500.
Amount not to exceed,
Mayor, I have one daughter, and she doesn't call twice often. I'm sorry.
No, you go right ahead.
amount not to exceed $5,500 per month.
Second.
Jenny, you got that?
You scribbled.
Good. All right, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? You second? We have a second. Is there any further discussion or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Key?
Yes.
Right? Okay,
I guess I should have asked this question, but that included.
no,
Ms. Lindsay.
we're going to need
We're
to
fixing to
take
do that.
official
Okay.
action to appoint an interim city clerk.
Okay.
Now, the city clerk, just for everyone's just knowledge, they are the official record keepers of the city.
Mhm.
And that is a requirement that we have someone that is responsible for those records. And Lindsay, you have graciously tried to not only fill in, but gain some knowledge here in a short period of time, and I want to thank you
Mhm.
for doing that. So, we were, discussing the interim city clerk.
Yes.
And so what we were just table was that is a requirement that we need to do, and do you have anything to add other than that for the council action to appoint Lindsay as that person?
In talking to Nick, the actions that would be necessary to do the city clerk, it is in the charter for the city clerk to be X, Y, Z. There are further stipulations within our code of ordinances.
Right, the code of ordinances addresses financial responsibility.
So what the next step, because we are consistent with our charter to hire Lindsay, we would, in our next meeting, need to make changes to our code of ordinances to take out the accounting component so that we could then take the next step and make the accounting components a completely separate job description and then go after strictly an accounting position. So this is step 2 and the combination of step 3 so that we can make this all work.
So if we appoint an interim city clerk, we have, that buys us that time to make those changes, assuming that if we, at the table, are comfortable doing that. I think it's very clear, even really before the storm. It's been some time, I don't know that the city's ever had a quote, financial certified accounting. We've always just sort of farmed that out through audits and other means, but things have certainly changed since Michael in terms of the requirements for accounting services with the city. So, first step would be to appoint an interim city clerk. Is there a motion to do that?
I make a motion we appoint an interim city clerk.
Second.
We have a motion second. Any discussion?
Who would that?
Oh, yeah. That's right, Bob. We need to identify by name.
Oh. What's your last name?
That's right, I don't know.
Hovind. Hovind.
Hovind.
H-O-V-I-N-D.
Linda Foley.
Lindsay Hovind. All right, there you go. You got that in the bit.
I've always
Yes.
known
She spelled it wrong.
All right, we have a motion and a second to appoint Lindsay as our interim city clerk. Is there any discussion? Again, call the roll, please.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Pollock?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Key?
Yes.
Thank you. So, to the changing of the advertisement / job description is something that'll come to us at the next meeting?
What I'd like to do is start, I'll draft that, I'll get it to the council, and we'll modify the land development code so that everything congeals at the next meeting. Yes, sir. But in the meantime, if I can get that job description out, if you allow me a little bit of flexibility after everyone has reviewed it individually.
What happens if we find someone, does that eliminate the city's ability to hire one person to do both of those jobs?
So basically, your code of ordinances has a job description in it for the city clerk, and it describes a lot of accounting and financial roles. We would need to change that by ordinance. If we called it an emergency, it'd be next meeting 1 year. If we called it a regular ordinance, it'd take 6 weeks. So you got a little time. It's not gonna change in between, overnight between the meetings. If you have a great applicant that comes in.
But even 6 months? I mean, I don't know what we're gonna find, but I'm talking about if we find someone, can the city, then I guess would have to go back and change it back?
Depends how we did it. If we just made the description less specific of what the clerk has to do, you don't have a problem because you just adjust what's occurring through.
I would like it written where we have that flexibility.
Okay.
I hate to just, if we can function that way, and I think with the right person, we could, we just haven't found that person, you know, yet, but I mean, okay, so could we, is that agreeable to try to make it so that we don't, that we still have the flexibility in the code of ordinances that allow for that? Okay.
Can I?
Yep, question, or comment?
We're actually probably gonna make it easier to find, we've already found the clerk. We're gonna have a lot more applicants for the accounting assignment, correct?
Yes, sir.
Really lessen, so there is possibly some competition or some less money required to do since they only have that one.
The current cap at, for the city clerk, I believe is 65, please don't quote me on that, but
65.
it's somewhere in there. In my conversations with the accounting firms that I've been talking to, we should be able to find a 2 to 3 year accountant that is available in that price range.
So
we're having a hard time finding someone that is both the city clerk and an accountant, because that's a very specialized niche. But if we open this up to strictly accountants, we probably will have a good number of applications that come in as applicants. And that's hopeful, because we still have the issues of housing.
But would we have to consider her pay with the accountant's pay as reaching that cap together, or would they have the possibility of going over that by a lot of money?
For right now, if you would consider her current pay, she would need to get something more. She's gonna carry on a good bit more responsibility.
Sure.
Reaching out here, I would say that the current job pay that we have for the city clerk and accounting has been advertised over in Panama City now for 4 weeks, and they have yet to find someone, and they're all the way up at 85,000. So we may have been shy of where we needed to be to get people to come out of the woodwork to come here. So that 65 range, if we can keep that 65 range for the accountant, I feel that we can find an accountant for that dollar figure.
Okay.
Remember, great point, she's on the payroll now. It's not like and then Mario was considering what, an increase to what she's making to offset the added responsibility of accepting the
Okay.
clerk's duties.
So, but now, will the clerk duties take all of her time, or will she still be doing her duties as she's doing now? Or do we need to place what she's doing now?
And one of the things that we have right now is we have some.
I just think, I don't have a problem, I'm just trying to get it all clarified so that we don't, just to make it in my mind clear, because I'm kind of simple-minded.
One of the things that we have right now is we have the benefit of having 2 or 3 FEMA employees.
Okay.
And I'm hoping that we can pass a good bit of that over to one of these 2 young ladies.
To handle
her responsibilities. I don't know how much longer we have that directly through FEMA. That is a lower pay scale, and that would be something that I would bring back to the council.
Okay.
But again, some of the things that I really need, I gotta get a grasp on our budget.
Sure.
Because we need that step in order to make a couple of other steps and follow through.
Well, I think the FEMA people that you're referring to that are temporary here, we're gonna have them, I think, through the budget cycle, which will give us a chance at the budget time to sort of massage all that.
Now, they have to be serving under hurricane recovery thing, so it's gonna be some share, so that we'll make sure that we work that out.
Perfect.
Okay. Are we through with number 7?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. I hope so. All right, you wanna start, do you have miscellaneous?
No, Mayor, I'm at a loss for miscellaneous.
Nick, you have anything?
No, sir.
Nancy? Sandy?
No, we're still working the way upstairs. I would say within the next 2 weeks, we'll have a major, step forward. We'll have something really concrete or plasterboard to show you. Whether we make it by the 1st of April, I haven't asked him that question yet, but it's about to be asked.
Only cause the chair's empty, it would be
Tina?
remiss on me to not say, does Nina have anything, because she's already done it. So did anyone bring anything from her? No.
There is asphalt that will be going down.
I was expecting to say, asphalt is being laid on Salt Creek as we speak.
All right. Thomas, you have anything?
The only other thing else I had was the water and sewer on the south side of 98. We know it's supposed to be done by the end of this month. It is on track. They are from 8th Street Canal up to 13th so far, both water and sewer. It's not usable yet, it's still off. They have to go all the way to 19th Street to finish the job, but they are on track to finish by the end of the month.
Great. There?
No, sir.
Derek?
Oh, go ahead.
I do have one thing, and it would be remiss not to say it because Dina has been working her tail off for the last 3 weeks, along with Atkins and other consultants that have been working. But the city did submit $25.5 million worth of requests to FEMA for HMGP, long-term mitigation type projects that include, a master stormwater system for the city, a jetty for the city, a, stormwater lock at the canal for the city, a, storm hardening, a police fire, city hall, civic center facility, and generator, and then lastly, upgrading 3 of your.
Three lift stations
lift
upgraded
stations.
bypass points.
So all of those projects have gone to the state. They have extended it to May the 28th. They gave us that extension yesterday. We were done. We were proud of the product, so it's being delivered as we speak. The balance of Bay County has had the same goal of submitting all of their projects. So Bay County, again, hats off to Bay Counties. They've put in $260 million worth of requests to make Bay County that much stronger for the next storm. So this is future work. This isn't cleanup work.
I was, Sandy showed me the upstairs where the fire department's gonna be. It's looking really good, and, it's planned out very, very well. And, I think we're getting a good deal at a good price, and, well done. So thanks to Sandy on most of that.
Only thing I have is remind everyone, City Hall will be used for voting next week. Monday and Tuesday, they will have, you can cast your ballot. Early voting was not in Mexico Beach, which was this week, but, next week, Monday and Tuesday, City Hall for voting. Motion for adjournment. Oh, come on,
I got a couple things.
come on, sorry.
Building department is holding 2 COs for, one is for an issue of a HVAC platform in setbacks. We took this to P&Z to get their opinion, and I need your thoughts on that. Are HVAC units allowed in setbacks? Planning and zoning was under the impression that was okay. That was their recommendation, that HVAC platforms are allowed in setbacks.
And Mayor, there probably 50% of what's out there has an air conditioning unit that's within that 7 feet.
It's not attached to the house,
No, sir.
it's a freestanding platform.
Yes.
It's attached by the cord.
Right. I'm just curious, what has been our policy? I don't know.
I was told that nothing could be in the setbacks, nothing, aside from a on-grade, concrete pad or pavers or something like that, and on-ground landscaping or trees as long as it's not in front setbacks.
I'm looking at land development code now, I'm guessing the answer is not crystal clear, or it never would have gotten here.
Right.
Well, I can tell you, I've landscaped and paved around a whole bunch of them, they're everywhere, they're all in all the setbacks. If you didn't let these guys do it, I mean, they could go and get 50 by days in to say they're in it.
Yeah, and it's become an issue because in days past, they were just on a concrete pad on the ground.
Right.
But because we've elevated everything up to the 500-year flood, it really doesn't make sense for you to put your house 4 feet up and then put your air conditioning unit down on the ground. So all these pads are now elevated at 4 feet or 6 feet, wherever they need to be. And generally, if the house is high enough, they're underneath the house. So once you get to a higher elevation, it's not the issue. It's that 2, 3, 4 foot tall stem wall that then forces you to either have it in front of your house, behind your house, or on the side. In talking to fire department, they can still get past it to get around to the back of the house, so it's not an inconvenience on the emergency side. It's more technicality, and that's why we're looking at it.
When they come to the building department, do you ask them if there's another place to put it?
On
Or
the
do we
front
just
end,
accept?
on the front end, we've been requiring them to show it on the site plan and make sure that it's not in the setback.
But I mean, like if it could be moved to the rear instead of the.
Right,
I'm just saying, I mean, we try to,
Can
on
I-
the front end,
I
but
mean, it
not
seems pretty
on
harmless.
the back end.
It seems pretty
I
harmless.
built houses for a long time, and I can tell you that the air conditioning guys are really at a real hard disadvantage in trying to cool everything if it's not in the center. They have to centralize that thing. But otherwise, it gets completely out of balance. And so, from a builder's perspective.
Typically, homes here tend to be narrower lots, so the homes
Longer.
become longer
Correct.
and
I
narrower,
got you.
and then
I
that's,
got you.
getting to the center, like you said, becomes much more crucial.
Yeah, right.
With a square house, yes. With a
Yeah.
linear house, it becomes more complicated.
Absolutely.
What about a height? If
It
it's-
has to be above base flood, so.
Okay, if it's past well, it's within the not limited areas on the ground, if it's 25 feet in the air, built onto the house, do you allow that?
No.
No.
Can't
At
be
that, at that
attached.
point, it's attached to the house, like the
Right.
mayor mentioned.
Right.
P and G.
We're trying to make it where it's
what
not
was
an
their- what
accessory
was their
structure.
decision?
We saw it as figuring out the amount of floor space you lose by making it be within that setback. I mean, your houses would be much smaller than they are. We're talking a 4-foot pad, based on the length of the house, based on how long the house is. That's a hell of a lot of floor space. That's what we consider. If they're not an issue for emergency services,
No big.
I don't see a big deal.
Okay, thank you. All right, is there objections to it?
Not for me.
Not to me.
Okay.
Okay, second issue, decks in the setback, that's the other one we're holding a building, or a CO on, for decks that are, for a deck that's encroaching in setbacks. 3 feet off grade, handrails. Similar things to what I've seen you guys deny variances for in the past. But I wanted to bring it up.
Decks?
Deck.
Decks can't be in the setback, never have been allowed.
That's right. I just wanted to
I mean,
bring it up again to make sure we're getting a contractor that's trying to fight that, and I told him I would bring it up to you guys, get further clarification and make sure that
I
we're.
mean, the ground level, like if it's just like a patio, where you walk out the door and you're on the ground, that's not never been a problem.
Right. This is a deck, an actual deck.
And again, keep in mind, when houses were built right on the ground where it was just one step down and you were on the ground, it was just nothing more than a 4x4 piece of concrete. Now that house is on a 3-foot stem wall, and you gotta come out onto a little 4-foot platform and then
Well,
2 or
didn't we
3
do
steps
that
to get to
with
the
over here?
ground.
Didn't we just get through with that over here in Grand Island?
Yes, sir.
And the answer was no.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
The guy took the dang thing down.
That's right.
That's where we are. He's been told no.
Your code, if it's part of the house, it's certainly not allowed in the setback, but your code also says accessory structures don't go in setbacks either.
Right. I mean, I don't wanna change anything about that.
Okay.
You can put a deck in the back, it doesn't matter how cool or hot it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't.
Okay?
Okay.
Feel like we're,
Sure.
feel like we're sitting up here taking a test. Yes, sir.
A whole separate thing. In the beginning of the year, the first thing that got discussed at the council meeting was about food trucks. And you come up with the ordinance to extend it for 2 years. At that same discussion was about RVs. Where are we with RVs that are sitting around on lots that got piled down, no houses, lots for sale with RVs? What's going on with that?
Kathy's in the background, and one of the exercises that she's taken is she has gotten new decals, and she is going through and basically creating a new database, but any RVs that are not associated with a new construction are being tagged and being told that they have 30 days to go away. So if there's no set of plans being dropped off to the building department, if there is construction going on, you should start to see those trailers go away within not too distant time frame. But if there is a construction trailer or drawings in for permitting, we're allowing them to be there during the construction of the home.
How much time till they get a permit?
Well, again, the permit takes 2-3 weeks. So as long as they've submitted something, we'll let them go in, set up, so that once they get the permit, they've got a place to go in and work out of. But they are required to have drawings into the building department.
To add to that, as a question, I know when I had my house done, I was allowed 6 months to bring in my RV and live in while the house was being put up. Somebody buys a lot now with trees on it, they bulldoze down the lot, and there's an RV sitting there. Is that RV gonna be there for a year, year and a half if they get a building permit? I mean, I didn't even think that was allowed to happen to start with. Cause there was never a house there to start with.
Again, building permit allows it, and building permits, we're issuing building permits in 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah, depending on how fast people get their information in.
But again, it's once they've got all their information in, it's not, you submit a site plan and then you submit something else. It's a full set of documents.
Okay. Yeah, Bill, what you got?
Question kind of on lines. There are still quite a few lots around, that the owners haven't taken care of the trees, and of course, 18 months after the fact now, trees are getting very brittle. I'm not sure, I haven't had a chance to ask where we are. Are we treating this situation so we can get this taken care of and take care of safety?
Yes. On the tree situation, the city cannot go into private property unless it influences the right-of-way and roadways. So right now we have AmeriCorp, which is a volunteer organization that is cataloging all the trees. Once we catalog all the trees, we're gonna get all of those over to FEMA, and that's just so that we can recoup the money for the haul off. AmeriCorp can also drop the trees and buck them, so we're getting at least that much service at no cost. But once they've done that, we'll have enough data to give to FEMA so that hopefully we can then pay for the haul off of those trees. If we have trees that are on private property that put public property in danger, we will have to get a letter from them saying it's okay for us to go into that. Private property is responsible for private property. If you have a dead tree on your site and it endangers your neighbor's site, your neighbor may have a claim against you if that tree falls on their property. If your tree is alive and it falls, it became your tree. But if your tree is dead, it is your liability on private property. So anyone that does have a tree adjacent to them may want to contact them and let them know. It's more of a civil issue there, and we might be able to get involved because of life endangerment, and I might be able to get the fire chief to say that it's a fire hazard. Again, there might be some other things, but we haven't gotten to that step yet. And then the other thing that Kathy's working on is working with Lindsay on the list of buildings that had over 50%, and we're gonna reach back out and start notifying them that they need to show us proof that they either have an insurance claim or that they are doing something in behalf of tearing down the derelict home. And at that point, we might have to get the building department in to say that it's a danger to the public. And then we do have the mechanism within the city's ordinances to tear the building down and then put the cost of tearing that building down on their tax roll. The city did do that a couple of years back, so we do have that as a tool also.
Does that same mechanism allow on these lots, because they become a hazard of fire, much less you start collecting animals in there that can be a hazard? Does that mechanism help that also?
That's where the building department kicks in. The building department can tell us that it's a physical hazard. If somebody were to walk in, they could get hurt. That's one that's probably the easiest. The animal hazard then becomes code enforcement as opposed to building. I've got a lot more strength through the building department than I have in the code department, so I'll probably utilize the building department as a stronger arm to get those taken care of.
Who condemns the site?
Our building official is the one that is authorized to condemn the site.
Have we condemned any sites?
No, we don't condemn, we recommend that they be condemned. You actually do the condemning.
So we have to vote on it up here? Huh? No.
They have to give me a letter that says that the building is a hazard, and then we can take action on it.
That's good, that's really good, because we have several places that are
Yes.
dangerous.
And we've been giving time, because as we all know, some people are still dealing with insurance,
Right.
and we've given ample time. Now we're gonna be more proactive.
Yes.
I've spoken to the city administrator, but I wanted to thank this, I'm all things golf carts. The golf cart bridge was fixed. The city, employees fixed it. We use that all the time. It gives us a little bit of normalcy. I drag the kids to the park. So I'm really thankful that, nobody had to complain. That's community working together. I really appreciate that was done. And I also appreciate that dead trees on 7th Street that were leaning towards the slide are gone. I just see things being done and nobody's having to holler and scream and complain. It's just happening, and I just want to let you know I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Yes, sir, Bob?
Just real quick, I'm part of the Past Association with St. Joe. It's just a matter of concern, and it's been talked about coronavirus, and steps are being taken and talked about what you can do, to mitigate some of the problems there. And I didn't know this is just a word out that, it's been looked at, the city, if it came down to it, we might have some ideas.
Okay. Anything else? Motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, gentlemen. It's always a pleasure being here. Kill this thing.